Feel like I should do a little salsa dance for you here with the Danza Kuduro, right? So I am so glad to be here with you all today. Let me just get my computer going here, and then we'll get going here. Okay. And so this is my hometown. Lansing is my hometown. Now you might be thinking, we haven't seen this guy before. Where has he been if he's a Michigander? But it's because I've been moving back and forth between California and Texas for about 20 years. And so I came back to serve as provost at Western Michigan University just 2 years ago. So I am so glad to be home. In fact, this is home, this center. Let me tell you a story about this very Lansing center. This was the place where I went to my first college fair as a high school student, right here in this building. And I remember going to the University of Michigan table and talking with a representative who told me about the Scholar Recognition Award. And then college seemed like, okay, well, maybe this is something that I can actually afford. And so my college decision was actually made right here in this room. So I just want to do a show of hands here. How many of you can remember that moment, like that moment that I had when college first felt real for you? Maybe it was a counselor, maybe it was a visit or someone who said, you can do this. How many of you remember that? How many of you remember that moment? Yes. Now, that's the power of the work that you're doing every day, because you are that moment for someone. So to be back here decades later speaking about college access, equity, and opportunity feels like I've come full circle. And as you heard, that bio made me feel tired and old, so let me just say that. I've spent my career in higher education, in civil rights, and community leadership. So what I want to do today is be a little bit professorial, but also keep you entertained and talk about a framework, a way to turn the pressure of this moment into purpose for you. Not a formula, but a mindset for how we can lead in these unprecedented times for higher education. How we can lead in a storm without losing our center. And I hope by the end of this conversation that we can see our daily pressures as an invitation to grow in strategy and reflection with purpose. So let's start by naming the moment that we're in. Across Michigan, from Benton Harbor to South Haven to Iron Mountain to Marquette, professionals like you are navigating what feels like a perfect storm. FAFSA changes, declining enrollments, the enrollment cliff, legislative uncertainty from the state and from the feds, growing polarization about the value of higher education. And yet, here you are, showing up for students every day. And that's not a small thing, because you're standing at the intersection of conviction and politics. I know that place well. As a former provost and dean for the last 6 years and now a tenured professor, I've felt that tension between institutional responsibility and community conscience, between protecting institutions and protecting students. Leading from the Crossfire requires conflict intelligence, the capacity to stay focused in the heat of disagreement and strategic in the midst of unprecedented pressure. Because the work ahead of us is not about the mere survival of higher education, but about democracy itself and about our intelligent adaptation, about turning pressure into purpose. So what do I want to do today? I want to talk about a little bit of theory, conflict intelligence theory, and it grows out of decades of peace studies, organizational psychology, and real-world leadership experience. That's the heart of this talk, to help you lead courageously and strategically in spaces that you're in without losing your center or sense of purpose. Because if we're just honest, this moment in Michigan, this moment in our country demands something beyond resilience. It demands intelligent adaptation, leadership that's tough and tender, courageous and calculating, faithful and innovative. So the theory, I'm just going to quickly go through this. See, conflict intelligence leadership focuses on 4 things: self-awareness, social awareness, situational adaptation, and systemic awareness. And I'm going to break these down for you quickly. We'll walk through each dimension and then apply them to 5 challenges that we're facing in higher education today. From governmental pressure and internal resistance to public narrative and disinformation. So we're going to do that right now. And then I'm going to have you talk to each other too. And I'm a professor, so when I put it out to you, you all need to stay on task, okay? Stay on task. All right, here we go. First one, self-awareness. Self-awareness is where it all begins. Leadership under fire requires to know what sets you off. Think about a time when you were set off. Think about what steadies you. We all have triggers. The email that feels like an attack. The rumor that causes your blood to rise. The meeting where someone yells. They yell, and they question your entire purpose. Conflict intelligence helps us understand to pause, to choose how to respond rather than react. Choose how to respond rather than react. When I was serving as provost, I once received a sharply worded email that criticized our college access success. We had increased our first-year African American enrollment by 27% in just 2 years at Western. My first instinct was defensiveness, maybe a little anger, but after a long walk and a longer pause, I realized that my task wasn't to defend our strategy, it was to defend our purpose. That single realization changed the tone of everything that followed for me and our team. So now what I want you to do is take 10 quiet seconds. Think about the last moment that really tested your patience in this work. And think about what emotion showed up first. Was it anger? Was it fear, exhaustion, resolve? Let me just give you a second to think about that moment. Okay. That awareness, that thoughtfulness is conflict intelligence. You're asking yourself, what red lines must I defend, and where can I be flexible, and how do I respond? And that question protects your integrity and your energy in these moments, these triggering moments. Because self-aware leaders practice emotional redirection, not because they're detached or they don't care, but because they care deeply and they care wisely. In the crossfire, your calm is your credibility. Being centered is your strategy. Now we're going to talk about social awareness. Once you understand your center and what can trigger you, you begin to read the landscape around you. Social awareness is the art of seeing the full ecosystem, the allies, the skeptics, the silent supporters who may not speak up but are quietly rooting for you. Some of our most powerful allies, they don't use the same language we do, but they have the same heart. The superintendent championing grow your own teacher pipelines, the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce leader championing workforce readiness, the counselor advocating for FAFSA completion. They're all a part of the same mission. They're just speaking different dialects of the same dream. So let me do another audience activity. Now, this one's 30 seconds. I want you to turn to someone near you, and I want you to talk about who's been an unexpected ally in your work. Someone who surprised you by being on your side. Maybe not quite 30 seconds. I'll give you 20 seconds. A surprise ally. Go. Okay, are you out there? Okay, let's bring it back. So I have a question for you. How many of you remember the In Living Color skit, Jamaican Airlines, where the pilot was also the mechanic, also the flight? Oh, you remember that? Okay. Well, that's my life, okay? And one of the things that I do on Jamaican Airlines is I'm a senior advisor with MIHC. And one of the things that we do as a part of our design learning program is we have a clap that brings us together, okay? So this is a huge room, and I've always wanted to try this with 1,000 people. So here's the thing. We're going to do a clap together, but if one person is out of sync, you can hear it. So I'm going to count to 3, and we're going to do one synchronized clap to bring us back together. 1, 2, 3. Oh, first try for 1,000 people. Brilliant. Good job. So what you talked about with your partner is the foundation of social awareness, finding alignment in unexpected places. So you have to ask yourself, who are my allies? Who are my skeptics? Who's quietly hoping I'll succeed? When you start to see people through that lens, you move from defense to offense, from isolation to connection. And in moments like these, shared purpose is our strongest currency. Shared purpose. Situational adaptation, the third. We have to reframe our work. We have to be situationally adaptive, translating our values into language that our audience and our stakeholders can hear. We're living in a moment where the word college can trigger resistance. Some hear college access and think elitism. Others hear equity and think politics. We want to protect our purpose without retreating. So instead of affirmative action, we are talking about education and training for everyone in Michigan. Instead of equity, we're talking about opportunity, talent pipelines, retention and readiness. Our values stay the same, but the vocabulary shifts. Reframing is strategic communication. If we can't say DEI, we can say excellence, access, and belonging for everyone. If college feels distant, we can say career-connected learning. Our work is not ideological. It is transformational. So, I'm going to toss it back to you again. Think about a phrase or a program in your organization that might trigger misunderstanding. How could you reframe it without losing its value or its purpose? Okay, I'll give you 10 seconds. Go. Okay, all right, let's bring it back. I'm gonna do 1, 2, 3. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3. Thank you. You just did situational adaptation in real time. It allows you to stay effective in environments that are evolving. It asks, how do I connect my mission and values to the motivations of everyone in my community? Adaptation is the ability to speak dialectics of power without losing your values. And finally, systemic awareness. Now we're going to zoom out. Systemic awareness is the ability to see how politics, economics, and cultural forces are shaping what's happening in higher education, things that are external to our daily work. In my own leadership journey, I've sat in meetings where national headlines changed the mood of the room. Emergency meetings were called. One viral social media post on the parents' Facebook group or a budget proposal that was leaked to the media can ripple through the university. Systemic awareness means asking, what larger pattern are we a part of? Is this a pushback about educating students, or is it about power? Is the scrutiny about education, or is it actually about elections and media? We have to recognize that we must respond strategically instead of emotionally. As I often remind colleagues, we may not control the chessboard, but we can still win the game. Systemic awareness gives us altitude. It keeps us from confusing turbulence with failure. When you see the larger patterns that are surrounding us in higher education, we understand how to strategize, where to press, where to pause, and most importantly, how to plant hope. Now finally, I want to talk about 5 quick pressure points. One, there's governmental risk. We see it all around us. Federal and state oversight arrive as political theater overnight on Fox News. Leaders must separate rumor from regulation, reframe inclusion as workforce and investment, and refuse to pre-comply out of fear. We must not bow to pressure. We must outthink it. Number two. You're ready for finally, right? So frenemies in your institution, frenemies. Sometimes the resistance comes from people that are within and hiding in the shadows. I know a little something about that. Conflict-intelligent leaders pause before reacting. They map power dynamics and build coalitions of purpose rather than agreement. Strategic containment and planning protects your mission as fiercely as principle. Defending higher education as a public good. We can reclaim the narrative by linking education to democracy's infrastructure. You are the front lines of democracy. We must link it to teacher pipelines, healthcare, civic stability. We don't teach inclusion to be woke. We teach it to make our nation's opportunities work for everyone. The disinformation ecosystem. False narratives spread faster than fact. You've seen it on Reels, Instagram, TikTok, the whole thing. We must, in our areas, in our spaces, have rapid response teams, coordinated messaging so that we can respond with clarifying truth. When attacked, we must illuminate. Although not every provocation, I must say, deserves an audience, sometimes silence is strategy. There's an emotional toll of this work. We have to sustain ourselves in hostile, evolving circumstances, and it's real. You have to create rituals of restoration for yourself. I wrote a blog post on cloaking inequity about finding your garden. Maybe it's an actual garden, or it's the place that's metaphorically a garden for you. Also, build networks of courage where you are across the state and nation, people that you can just pick up the phone and talk to when that thing happens. And finally, leadership through the Crossfire requires grace under pressure with your communities of care. Now let's talk about reclaiming leadership. Reclaiming the future of learning means seeing college access not as embattled language, but as innovation infrastructure. Opportunity fuels discovery, creativity, and the human capacity. For example, we often think about graduation rates and retention rates, and I'm really proud to say, are there any Broncos in here? Any WMU Broncos? Okay, yes, I love it. One of the things I'm really proud to tell you is that Western Michigan has set graduation and retention rates all-time records 3 years in a row. Now, how we did that, how we did that is a whole other keynote speech, so I can't do that today. But the bottom line is that we can't just track who enrolls, but who thrives, who graduates, who thrives once they lead our institutions. Why? The most savvy employers want graduates who can work with anyone, anywhere, with empathy and agility. That's opportunity at its best. The future university, to compete with AI, again, a whole nother keynote, must be interdisciplinary, human-centered, and intelligent. We can't run from this complexity of technology that's coming to us. We must harness it. And then finally, a quick blueprint, maybe a challenge. MCAN is more than a convening, it's a laboratory. You represent institutions in counties across the mitten, each with distinct challenges. Yet together, you hold the capacity for local blueprints, shared community initiatives. I think you could call it Project 2029, where you commit to designing conflict-intelligent institutions. You can publish frameworks and share case studies, and you, the people in this room, you are mentoring the next generation right this minute. They are watching what you do and how you respond in this moment. History is not going to remember the bans on curriculum or the backlash to DEI as much as it's going to remember the people who rebuild, those who turned the Crossfire into strategy. So a couple of points of action. I can't just give you a talk some theory without giving you some points of action. Lead with clarity. Define your purpose clearly so that noise can't drown it out. Write it on a piece of paper if you have to. Fold it up, set it on a shelf, revisit. Define your purpose. Communicate with courage. Say the hard things, but say them with care. Courage without compassion is cruelty. Compassion without courage is complacency. Adapt your intelligence. Be conflict intelligence. Translate your values into language and actions that sustain your mission. Reframe strategically so that the work can keep breathing even when the politics tighten. Conflict is not the opposite of learning, it's its teacher. Friends, as a preacher would say on Sunday, I'm about to bring it home. Our task is not to wait for calmer times. Calm has never been the precondition for courage. The day is always darkest before the dawn. We must all step forward to lead wisely and intelligently right now in the crossfire. In every generation, education has faced moments like this. Times when the purpose of learning itself is under question. And each time, it was people like you who stood steady. Your ancestors stood steady. They kept the doors open. They believed classrooms could be sanctuaries for truth and knowledge. Conflict will never leave our work. Education is where conviction is tested. Those who lead through the crossfire with empathy and intelligence turn storms into seasons of learning. And when the cloud lifts, you'll be ready, steadied by wisdom. As Dr. King said, the ultimate measure of a person is not where they stand in moments of comfort and convenience, but where they stand in times of challenge and controversy. As a parent of a high school senior, I feel this work deeply. My daughter's a senior, admitted so far to Michigan State Madison College, Oakland, Eastern, feel free to shout out, Central, Grand Valley, Detroit Mercy's 3+3 Law, Michigan Dearborn, Wayne State, and she's waiting to hear from a few more, including Michigan's early decision. But like so many families across this state, we're walking this path of access and opportunity, and it's not easy. I have a PhD in education. So when I say that I'm depending on you and the families of this state are depending on you, I really mean it. It's personal. I'm depending on your courage. I'm depending on your care. I'm depending on your belief that every student in this generation deserves a chance to find their way. Thank you. Did we do Q&A?
Yeah, we got time.
All right. She says I stayed on time so we can do Q&A, which is always the best part, right? Because not canned responses. I think we have roving mics now. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you have a question for Dr. Heilig, could you please go ahead and put your hand up?
Or a comment disguised as a question.
A comment disguised as a question also works for us. Additionally, if you would like to submit questions via the app, please see the instructions on screen. Tap the Keynote session in your schedule, and then you'll scroll down and there's a place for you to submit your question. All right, we've got microphones around the room, and it looks like we have our first question coming from your right.
Yes.
Hi.
Thank you so much for your discussion. I really want to know what in your lifetime gave you the courage? What experience can you attribute it that has given you the passion to fight as you do?
I think I mentioned it a little bit. My great-grandmother was the first black school board president of Saginaw Buena Vista High School. When I say I have deep Michigan roots, I have deep Michigan roots, right? My grandmother, my aunt was the superintendent of Saginaw Buena Vista. My grandmother was the librarian at Houghton Middle School. Anybody here from Saginaw? Spent all my summers at Ricker in summer school. And so really, there's the old saying, we stand on the shoulders of those who come before us. And so for me, I talked a little bit about how our ancestors have built our education, our universities, our school districts, and now it's our turn to stand up for those opportunities. And so that's where I draw my motivation from, is to whom much is expected, whom much is given, much is expected. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any others?
Are there others in the audience? I see, so to your left, I see Jenny.
Okay.
And let me say can I say one other thing in response to that comment? So as you all may have known if you read my bio, I've been serving as a dean and a provost for 6 years. And when you're in those roles, you're representing thousands of people. And you don't really have your own voice. And so over the last 6 months on LinkedIn, my newsletter, Without Fear or Favor, and Cloaking Equity, I really have had the opportunity to say some things that need to be said. Now, there are a lot of people who come out of leadership positions, provost, dean, they're not willing to say those things because they're ready to go to the next thing. But in this time and in this moment in history, I think we all have to lean into what we're good at, what our skills, what our bailiwicks at. And so I understood that I had to lean in, which means that they're never going to give me another provost job based on what I've been writing, ever. But that's okay, because you have to make that decision. And I have a friend who's in DEI work at Michigan. And she also said to me, Julian, you have to understand you also have some privilege, because I'm staff, I'm in the DEI at Michigan, and we all know what's going on with that. And so I'm a tenured professor. And so I have to do these things. And I understand that not everybody has that privilege to say the things that I can say. And so you just have to do this work carefully and strategically. I understand that I have to recognize that privilege.
Thank you so much. My name is Flora Bowles, and I work with foster youth programs at the state of Michigan.
Okay.
One of the things that you mentioned, which were several, I'm the type of person that take notes on everything that's said.
Okay.
One of the things you said was that calm is never a precondition for courage.
Yeah.
I appreciate that, because in this time that we are living in, we do need to be able to be calm in our strategic planning. So I also rephrased it and said that calm is confidence under fire.
Yes.
So thank you so very much. You were definitely inspiring, encouraging us to be able to go back and do our work and still stand up and voice our opinions. So thank you very much.
And this is a message to myself, too. I'm not going to tell you that every time someone has come at me on, Twitter or whatever, that I've always been calm, right? But I also understand, it's really like a self-realization for me that we have to have that steady purpose in this work. Because quite frankly, there are people out there that just want to get under your skin, get a reaction, whether it's in politics or in your job. They want to see that reaction. And so that steady purpose is what helps other people hear our message, that steady purpose. I wish I could say I've been calm in every moment when I have had conflict, but that is a steady purpose. Thank you for that.
Thank you. All right, we have time for 2 more questions. So I see somebody here to your right, and then we will take one from the app after that to wrap up.
Hey, I'm Lita.
Sorry, can you introduce yourself one more time for us?
Hey, y'all, I'm Lita. I'm a grad student at Western Michigan University, and I work in the president's office right now. Go Broncos, we just beat Central. Sorry. But I did want to ask you, what advice would you give a young professional like myself on how to manage emotions when we are feeling the triggers and the pressures from being around people in these roles?
I've been in the president's office, so I'm not going to say anything. I'm getting myself in trouble. Let's say, I think one is find good mentors. They are really fantastic mentors at Western. Come by my office anytime. And we'll sit down with you. Because you know what? I wouldn't be standing on the stage without so many people investing in me and loving on me. And so we're willing to do that. Always pause. Don't fire back. Just pause and take that walk. And run through it with people. Run through it with your community. I talked about building that community of care. So run through it with community of care. Run through it with your mentors. I have a whole set of mentors that I talk about things as they come at me, and a lot of times it's because they have experiences in politics or these other things. So those would be my advice. Make sure you have that community of care. Pause, take a couple deep breaths, take a walk, right? And also, find those mentors on campus. Cristobal Rodriguez, who I hired as the first provost of DEI initiatives, is in the president's office. He's someone you can trust. And I guess I should also say this. We talked about frenemies. You got to figure out who you can trust, because you can't trust everybody. And so you got to figure out who you can and cannot trust. So that's also very important. Because I always tell my kids, information is power. And you give certain people information, and they're going to take that information, and they'll use it against you. So that would be a fourth one, is just you also need to figure out who you can trust. Yeah.
Thank you. And we will go ahead and wrap. We might have time for two more.
Two more? Okay. Any more?
We've got a few here on the app. So question is, how do we help K-12 students understand the moment they're in, and how important is it to be educated when educational institutions are being so heavily policed?
I'm sorry, that's illegal, so I can't answer that question. Truly, in places like Florida, Texas, Missouri, there's a long list. Having those conversations, they're trying to make them illegal. I think that's unconstitutional. I think that infringes on the First Amendment. But I think leaders have to give educators the space to have academic freedom, regardless of your political background. I mean, my kid comes home, like her social studies teachers are right-wing Republicans. And so she's going back and forth with them all the time. Okay, great. I think it's good to be able to challenge our predetermined beliefs. So leaders have to give educators the space to educate. I think that's the first question. What was the second part of that question? Sorry.
Let me go ahead and get there. Yeah, no.
Or I can do like I do on TV and answer a question I didn't get asked. I could do that.
So the first part was, how do we help K-12 students understand the moment they're in? Yeah, so here we go. The second part of that question is, and how important it is to be educated when educational institutions are being so heavily policed. Okay, so how do we help K-12 students understand how important it is to be educated?
Yeah. I think one of the things, though, is to realize how fortunate we are to be in a state like Michigan. Yes, we have our quandaries. I'm not going to, everybody pays attention to the legislature. But the jobs of educators are under threat in the southern states. So I think one is to just appreciate the fact that we have the space that we have in our state, and then just understand that what I was saying earlier is that the students are watching us. Your kids are watching you. They're watching how we respond, and we are modeling what democracy looks like for them in the future. So let's make sure that we deliver on that promise of democracy by academic freedom, freedom of speech, opportunity to learn.
Brilliant, thank you.
Okay.
And we've got one more
Okay.
if you're up for it.
Yeah, one more, let's do this.
I like this one a lot.
Okay.
Marissa Taylor says, for the next 3 years, what would be a good goal for us to focus on at our places that will help move the whole state forward?
Yeah. So one of the things to think about is that leaders think that they control your institutions, but they actually don't. You do. The CEOs and the provosts and the presidents, they think that they're managing what's happening in these institutions, but they're not. You are. They think that their strategic plans are grand and wonderful. They're not. Because you are the folks that do the actual things. And so why do I say that? I say that is you can make your own strategic plans for your local area. Think about what the visions and values are. I'm all about community-based leadership. The presidents and the provosts and the CEOs, Joanne, don't listen to me, she's the CEO of MIHC. But the people on the ground, they do the things. You do the things. So think about what your 3-year plan is with your colleagues. How do you accomplish the mission and purpose of the work in your area? Think about how you do that locally and on the ground, because you are the ones in charge, and that's what the leaders don't want you to know. Thank you.